wherever we are, God has called us together to be his people, to be celebrators of our talents and people who invest and accompany others on their journey of faith. God of all goodness, we praise and we thank you for this time together, that we may grow in our knowledge of you and one another, ourselves, and your plan for us. And we ask this in Jesus' name, amen. The first thing that we're going to really talk about a little bit are the strength domains. And you'll probably remember from your previous seminars, especially that training that we had in the fall, that there are 4 strength domains which accompany all 34 of the talents. And those domains, executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. As you see in front of you, there are a number of different themes that fall into those categories, and they make up the whole synergy, really, of the strength finders. And sometimes we find, and you may notice this yourself as you look at the different themes of where your top 5 land. If you were able to circle this, if this were a whiteboard, you'd be able to take a look at what those themes are. So looking at executing, just as a quick review, the executing is what pushes people forward. They are the ones that make things happen, and they are motivational in their strengths, and they generate a focused energy for a team. So if you have some of those in your top 5, those folks, that you're one of those people that really helps to get things done and moves the agenda forward. Where the influencing theme are how individuals move others to action. So there are those that push individuals towards results, which are the executing, and then the influencing is those that move others to action. They have interpersonal strength that enables people to impact and to influence others in powerful ways. And especially they're like the type of people that take charge in a group. So you see some of those themes of activator, command, maximizer, self-assurance, woo, all of those are those influencing themes. Now the relationship ones are kind of the glue that holds everything together. These are how people build connections with others, including bonding and forming deep, meaningful, and close personal relationships. And they're the ones on the team that kind of bring the team together and provide that essential glue for the team to work together. And the reality is that we all have these themes. Usually when you do your top, your full 34 report, if you ever have an opportunity to do that, you're going to see that easily the first 10 themes most likely are going to be your dominant theme. So they are pretty strong all the way around. So even if you find that you don't have a relationship theme in your top 5, that's okay, because it's likely that it'll reveal itself further along if you were to do the full 34. When you're coaching someone through the top 5 and they're missing those things, it's important to communicate that to them, that this is just the tip of the iceberg, as we've said many times before. But it is just that tip, but it tells you where you are most likely to gravitate towards when it comes to these domains. And then the 4th one, of course, is strategic thinking. And these are the people that are analytical. They're the ones that are going to think through the process and help the organization process the information. They are going to think through it. They're going to need time to think through things. And when folks are aware of these themes and how their top 5 talents fit into the picture, it really makes a big difference for you as a coach, because it helps them to understand themselves a little bit better through that process. One of the tools that's out there right now that I find to be very helpful, and it was even helpful as I put together this presentation for you today, is a book that the Gallup organization put together, and it's Expanding Your Strengths. And it's available as an e-book. and Amazon has it, and I don't get a kickback for this, but it's like $24 on their website. But what I like about it is that it takes us into those theme dynamics. So it helps us look at the 4 domains and understand those. But then it also then takes that and has us look at each of the 34 themes and how they interact with other themes as well. So, and it'll give you almost like the cliff notes of what that might look like in a particular person. Again, even though it might be the cliff notes on how different themes might work together, at the same time, we don't want to pigeonhole anyone into any specific spot. So it's not one size fits all, but it gets a starting point for helping us to guide and ask the right questions of our clients and our coachees so that they can begin to explore that. So it's not so much saying, well, one of the ways in which I sometimes use that material is I say, often people who are exceptionally talented in this particular talent demonstrate these kind of things. And sometimes when these 2 themes work together, this might be an example of that. And that's where these cliff notes helped me to learn a little bit more about each of the strengths and each of the talents and how they might begin to work. And the more and more we work with them and also listen to the stories, which is the most important characteristic of our coaching, listening to the stories of our clients, we will begin to hear that with relative ease. So as we commit the themes to heart and get a real sense of what they are and read them over and begin to even get those, like I said, the cliff notes here together, it really is very helpful in being able to ask the right question and to hear something that the client says that can lead you to another question based upon your knowledge of the Strength Finder tool. So the more we know those themes, know the dynamics of the 4 domains, and how they begin to interact and study that, we're going to be able to ask even more probing questions and help the client to discover the more of the depth, I guess, really, of the talent they have and how that has been developed over a course of time or underdeveloped, which we'll talk a little bit about in a moment. So this is a page, a screenshot that I took of the electronic version of the book, and it gives you a little example of what that looks like. And again, I found this to be pretty decent, and it's a compact place of where Gallup has put a lot of their tools, a lot of their coaching tools that you can buy and spend hundreds of dollars on. A lot of that is nestled in this particular book, and so as you will see, it has. As the electronic version, you can click on those links and it moves you around the document. So it helps you to kind of look at it. So in this case, it's the achiever and activator. So when you put those 2 talents together, if you have those in your top 5, there's with urgent initiatives, you push others to get started so that the critical job will be finished as soon as possible. So it gives a little bit of a glimmer of what those 2 things what the dynamic of those 2 things might look like. And then it goes on to say who you might work well with. So if you find yourself working beyond an individual and working with a team, this will also help you to maybe coach them as well. And so it's a good tool for study and well worth the money for sure. And theme dynamics is really how all the soup is made and how this kind of goes together, how there is a synergy with it. And so one of the things with the talent themes, our talent themes are constantly interacting and combining with others as we enter into each different situation. So we look at our top 5, or even if we've done our full 34 assessment, we can begin to recognize how they are all working together, whether we realize it or not. And as a coach, we begin to, by listening to the stories of our coachees, help them not only to see the individual occasions of a particular theme at work, but also what that dynamic may look like, and why, Gallup even talks about it as kind of like chemistry, like the periodic chart. When you look at all 34 themes and you bring a couple of different ones together, and it's amazing what can happen. But those talents can magnify and support, but they can also modify things. So I'm actually going to try and see if this will work. Show you a little clip of one of the authors of the Living Your Strengths book, and a little clip that he put together regarding the dynamics of talents. It's just about a 2-minute little clip, and we'll see if it'll work here.
Began studying
Can you
talent,
see
the patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior we all naturally have. Our research shows that there are 34 broad categories or themes of talent. The Clifton Strengths Finder assesses your themes of talent and ranks them from your 5 most dominant themes all the way down to your 34th theme. Your top 5 themes are the ones that you use most consistently and that best characterize you. But you use different talents in different situations, and all of your talent themes influence each other. They can enhance, modify, or regulate other themes. We call this theme dynamics. To understand theme dynamics, think about the periodic table of elements in chemistry. Each element has its own special characteristics, but when 2 or more blend together, they create something brand new. For instance, oxygen and hydrogen both have distinctive properties, but when they combine, they become something new and powerful. Theme dynamics are a lot like that. Each talent theme expresses itself in predictable ways, but we don't use our talent themes in isolation. Depending on the situation, we use different talents, and those themes of talent influence each other. You may find, for instance, that circumstances require both your analytical and relator talents, and the dynamic between them creates something new. Your unique talents are innate. You can't change them or get new ones, but the more you know about your talents and the more you intentionally use them, the more productive your other talents get. That's the great thing about theme dynamics. So think about the elements that make you, you, how they interact, and how you can turn them into strengths. Your theme dynamics might be far more powerful than you realize. Both have distinctive properties, but when they combine, they become something new and powerful. Theme dynamics are a lot like that. Each talent theme expresses itself in predictable ways, but we don't use our talent themes in isolation. Depending on the situation, we use different talents, and those themes of talent influence each other. You may find, for instance, that circumstances require both your analytical and relator talents, and the dynamic between them creates something new. Your unique talents are innate. You can't change them or get new ones, but the more you know about your talents and the more you intentionally use them, the more productive your other talents get. That's the great thing about theme dynamics. So think about the elements that make you, you, how they interact, and how you can turn them into strengths. Your theme dynamics might be far more powerful than you realize.
When those talents can come together, it can be amazing. It can create something new and beautiful. But we also know that sometimes when talent, the wrong, maybe not the wrong, but when different chemicals come together, sometimes it can be explosive as well. So that can be a very poignant image that you can help a coachees understand as to why they may sometimes struggle with other people, or when you're working with a team and coaching a team, why sometimes you might feel as though someone's pushing your buttons a little bit, and that there are going to be some talents that are almost feel like they're sandpaper. And so helping our coachees to understand what the needs and motivations are, which you can find pretty much in the insights in the Living Your Strength book for each of the themes, it gives you a sense of what they can expect and what they really need in order to be able to flourish themselves, but then also to give them a language to be able to express that. Additionally, this Expanding Your Strengths book will help you to unpack that theme a little bit to them. So this is taking it to a little bit more of a depth than the initial conversation that our original coaching methods had in the training we had in the fall. But it is this next level. And so you can still ask those kind of leading questions, but you can also help them understand how certain things might be working, or ask them a question of, you know, for instance, in this case, the screen you have in front of you, another screenshot of achiever and deliberative. While you work with intensity and stamina, you don't want your work to be hurried. So they don't want their achievers really want to make something happen, but if they have a combination of achiever and deliberative, they may need to be able to ask their coworkers not to rush them, not to, you know, to give them a little bit of time, and that it's okay. But there are going to be others on the team that might have another theme that's like, okay, we need to just go and do this and try it and see what happens. And that might clash a little bit. But this helps them understand why the language might be different, why they might be feeling a barrier between themselves and someone else, or why there may just simply be tension, and to help them to manage that conversation and have an understanding of themselves. But then also it helps each team member to be able to communicate that to one another. That's when you're doing it as a team. If you're only coaching an individual, which a lot of us do when we first start out, sometimes in the stories that people tell, they will share a difficulty that they have with somebody that they're working with, a home situation, and so it's a very vulnerable time. It's almost, you know, we're in a Catholic context or a Christian context, I guess. It's like a little bit like confession, or, you know, a confidant. The coaching is them sharing with you as well. And so sometimes those stories share some really sensitive and even like hurtful things that are going on in their lives, woundedness. And this can help them to see maybe what the dynamic is that's going on. So this tool is an extraordinary way in which you can kind of look at what that might, how that might be managed, and it really will give you a greater look into what the you know, the Strength Finders dynamics are really about as far as those theme dynamics. Now there's another thing, excuse me, there's another thing to consider too when it comes to the Strength Finders, and that is that sometimes we can, for ourselves, apply what would be called a barrier label. We can apply it to ourselves, where we use terms that sometimes will sometimes take a talent and mistakenly devalue it, and we will also sometimes dismiss it. And so, you know, someone maybe gives us a compliment of, oh, you're really good at thinking all the details together and then arranging them, and you know, we have that natural inclination or a cultural inclination to just downplay that. And that's called a barrier label, in the sense that sometimes we can mistakenly dismiss a talent as a weakness, or people around us may do the same thing. And so sometimes there are things that maybe we were called as we were growing up, or, you know, or in a workplace. And one of them is like, I'll show you the next page here. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm jumping away. But so there's a barrier label. I'll show this in a moment. But like one of the terms is the command talent. Well, a barrier label for command would be bossy. You know, they're going to tell you what to do, and they're always, you know, well, there are times where that's really needed, but there are also going to be times where that needs to be modified. And maybe if not, if someone has command and woo in their top 5, they may be able to modify that, or positivity, and they might be able to massage that a little bit, and you can help them to look at how that might work together, and how they might help grow and mature that talent in a different way. So there is a rawness or a baseline level of our talents that we have in their innate, as they're innately given to us as they begin to grow and they take root. So there's the barrier label that we can sometimes devalue our talents, and people often will have that experience. They'll tell experience like, well, in your coaching session that, you know, this always happens, and now I have a name for it. I understand. It's okay. It's a strength or a real talent, but I always run into the same wall. Or people say this about me, and this may be. This is something that we can help them not to devalue it, but to see their talent as a real strength. So there's the barrier language, and then there is like the affirmation language, and this is where we want to help them to see differently what the theme is, what the domains are, and how that can really, you know, help them to flourish and blossom. And we want them to value the talent and celebrate it in others. So on a team coaching situation, you may find yourself, you know, talking to a couple of different people and helping them to learn how to affirm one another and in their talents. But on an individual basis, as most of our coaching situations are going to be one-to-one, and it's going to help to break the cycle of like negative language that someone may have heard over the course of their lifetime, even about a particular a talent that they exhibit, and to help them see it in a new light and a new value. Up until a couple of weeks ago, there was a website that was called CatholicStrengthsInstitute.org. And I went there today to try to make another screenshot so you could see a resource that's on there, and it's not there anymore. So I'm not sure what happened there, but one of the, here's an example of something that was on their website that like command is the talent theme. The barrier language is bossy. What we need to do is help our coachee be able to see that talent in a new light. And if we're working with a couple or with a team of people, this can help them to be able to see in a new way the person that's sitting across from themselves, or the individual to see the person that they're looking in the mirror at in a new way. So command is the theme, bossy, and then they're charismatic, driven. And those are all affirmative ways in which they can cultivate their talent in some ways. Now these, even though that website is no longer there, Gallup actually has them available, and they are also mentioned in that Expanding Your Strengths book. So the more I personally discovered all these things at different times in my research process of you know, investing in my talent of trying to be a coach and being able to listen more carefully to my coachees. And so I found them in different places, and I was going to share them with you, like that free website, but in this case, you're going to probably have to buy the book in order to have it. Gallup also has this available in coaching cards, which are sometimes things that you can just pull out. They have theme insights cards, so you can pull them out easily and even hand that to the coachee to read. And I've seen that done. But often, it depends on the circumstance of how you're going to coach, but that's another resource that's pretty inexpensive that's out there that you can get from Gallup directly. But that is one particular tool in their coaching kit. But I really, as I said about the Expanding Your Strengths resource, that book is just amazing. I do not believe that it's available in hard copy, but the electronic version is great to have on your computer to be able to just click, and it'll immediately take you through the pages of the book and bring it before you. And in there too are little clips of videos, and so with links. And so the video that we showed of the theme dynamics, in that chapter, it has a link where you can click on that and you can go to the YouTube page. And so that's another resource that you have to help you gain an understanding of the Strength Finders as well. They have the YouTube page, which is free. Again, just like when you go into your own top 5 and they have the little videos that you can click on, there are all 34 available online too. So that is another way in which you can continue to grow and maybe watch a couple of them a day just to we all learn in different ways and commit things to memory. But all of that helps us by knowing that and hearing it and committing it to our own memory, allows us to be able to ask the more poignant questions of our coachees. And that will develop over time. I don't know how many of you have had an opportunity to coach at this point. It's still the early stages for you, but it's, I'll tell you, don't be intimidated by having the resource in front of you, and even looking at it. I think it also gives greater, it's okay to have the Cliff Notes in front of you. I think it also gives a greater sense of certainty on the part of the other person, that the coachee, that you can even show them what it tells them, and be something that you can share with them even in a link. So there are a lot of good resources out there. One of the other things that it really helps the client understand a little bit more about themselves, and you'll be able to recognize this too as you are coaching them, and that is that there is the raw talent, the baseline talent of what we're born with, and that we spend a lifetime investing skill and knowledge in developing. And so sometimes things are underdeveloped. And I think I mentioned this in the last webinar we had as well, that for various reasons, whether we just have never had an opportunity to use the talent, and so it's remained somewhat raw and underdeveloped, or maybe it's been suppressed for whatever reason, family of origin or workplace situation where we're not able to utilize it. As you're coaching someone, you're going to want to be looking for areas where it's been developed, or maybe it's been undeveloped. And also it's possible then to help them develop some strategies on how they might invest in that talent in a new way. And those coaching cards would help with that as well. And the book will help you be able to do that as well. But the idea that from a Christian perspective, we see it too as ongoing growth in holiness and conversion. We're becoming something that God dreamed us to be. We're becoming that best version of ourselves. And so this is where I think that the Christian tradition really melds well with Strength Finders as well, and gives another, like a scientific language to our faith language. And that is that the maturity of the coaching process, our helping of our clients through the coaching process will help them to mature and grow in their talents, and to, you know, allow it to be really fruitful. So the maturity of a talent is really based upon the investment that we put into it and the knowledge into our talents to really make it the strength. So a raw talent is not necessarily a strength, but when we add those particular, whether it's skill or knowledge to that talent, it's going to mature. And that really does, as in all things, take a lifetime really to happen. Though that does happen in leaps and bounds at different times in our lives. And I think the earlier our coachees find that out in their life, and are a little bit more reflective on it and are mentored in that, the more likely that's going to really soar as a strength early on. But it's going to always continue to evolve. And with that is how we learn how to modify those talents too. So a strength is learning how to modify that raw talent as well, how the talents work together. So after like the initial coaching sessions of kind of going through and seeing if they accept and understand the discovery of what those talents are, this might be one of the ways in which that coaching relationship would continue. And so in the last session that we had, I talked about the bridge that you, like the notes that you take, and it's important to kind of look at those in between sessions so that you can, and pray again, but pray over those as you embark on the next coaching session with someone. Sometimes people don't want more than just kind of getting the bare bones of, this is who I am, and this is, you know, let me like just wrestle with, here are my talents. But sometimes that coaching relationship can go on further, and these are some of the tools that can help you do that. And that's where the coaching is asking the important questions, And it's hard to say exactly what those important questions are until you're just listening very closely to the person that their story, and taking into consideration these tools. And so it'll come over time, and you'll develop that skill over time. But initially, you may want to have these readily available. And even as I've begun to commit them to heart, I realize sometimes that I need to stop and go back and read them again myself, and just recollect a little bit on what they really mean and how the dynamics work. Because the sky's the limit. You know, there are when we look at the top 5, the possibility of someone having the same top 5 as us is like, what I think it's 1 in 135,000, and that only gets more complex as you start combining the themes all together. So looking at how that might work, I think it's going to be a constant study on our part as coaches to continue to learn about the Strength Finders tool, how they work together, but also, you know, learning about our own self and how the depth of this works for us, so that we don't get in the way of our coaching session either, or project our own talents onto someone else. Mm-hmm. So that's where it can be very helpful too. So where I would start with this is to really look at yourself at this point and your top 5 talents. And if you were to look into these resources, that to see what that dynamic is. And as someone who kept wanting to know more about this and about themselves, I couldn't help but go ahead and buy the book myself, just to be able to see how all this works together and get to the heart of it.
So I have a question. You started by talking about or you sort of finished by talking about early coaching versus late coaching. And I like that thinking, because like you said, not everyone wants to go forward. So if it does advance, it's more the importance of the deeper questions, the theme dynamics, and the talent maturity.
Yes.
So here's my question. I know you just said the tools that we've discussed. If you don't go that direction, and we're talking about from the Human Formation Coalition doing the APEST, if someone just goes to early coaching and just thinks that they're complete, and you can read from their signs, would you then suggest that you go on to APEST right away? I know we'll talk about that in the future, but go ahead and suggest that right away.
Yeah, they can go easily side by side. So I would suggest it right away, especially because sometimes it can be another way in which you can begin to see some of how the talents meld again with the APEST theme, and that will also help you gain some added conversation and story from the client themselves, and that will help you to be able to probe a little bit deeper too, even if you don't purchase this book on the Strength Finder. So yeah, it's definitely APEST is going to be the next step of one of the webinars that we're going to look at, to just see a little bit more so how the dynamic of the two go together. But certainly moving right on to that would be fine too, as a next step.
Right, and this book does look terrific. I agree with what Paul said. This book and these theme interactions, theme dynamics, it looks terrific. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And it really does, it will shine light on the APEST as well, because you'll be able to probe a little bit more deeply and help them to see things there too. So it is a partnership between the two resources. Yes.
I had a comment, if that's okay.
Sure.
Well, first, I just wanted to say I appreciate these webinars. They've been very helpful for me. And then this is just sort of, I guess, maybe the way I'm wired. I wound up taking my APEST 2 times because I didn't believe the results the first time. And it came back the top 3 exactly as it had said, and then the bottom 2 switched places. I was curious if you've ever known, or you yourself or anybody has taken the Strength Finders more than once, and what the results of that do they change much? Have you heard of anyone doing it?
That is an amazing question, because that comes up at times, and I've heard stories where people didn't like their results the first time, and so they took it over 10 times until they got what they wanted, which is a whole other issue. But I myself, in different times of my life, and when Strength Finders had been introduced to me, like even 10 years ago, before I was coached or anything about that, I took it, and then I took it again more recently, and I was able to also take the full 34. And things did change around a little bit, but not so much when you consider that the top 10 are probably your signature themes. So the top 5 are part of that. So they moved around a little bit, but there were still consistencies. So like 3 of the top 5 stayed the same, but the other 2 maybe moved down a little bit lower and 2 other ones came up. And I discovered what that was and what that meant when I saw the full 34, because of how that works. So, but I've had people who have taken the assessment and they said, well, I don't think this is me. And sometimes that's where the coaching really helps. They're like, I want to take it over again. And one of the people I talked to said that, this was me, 10 years ago. This isn't me now. But through the coaching, we discovered that some of that talent through life circumstances she had to set it aside and not be able to live it. And so it was part of the coaching was revealing, how do you embrace that again? How do you really be who you are? Now recently I had someone again who took it, and they said, I was so confused in taking the assessment that answering the questions that I didn't, I don't think I missed so many. I just want to take it over. And when it really came down to it, I think it would have been fine, but I wanted to reassure her and make her feel confident that she felt confident with the results. And so I said, go ahead and take it again. And she did. And it was, there were some differences in the top 5. So I'm not sure, I can't speak to what happened there, and that's where you can, kind of feel over. Now it's $20 a shot, usually 15, 20 a shot. So you have to really want to change the results to really, and that's a whole nother issue. But yeah, that it does change a little bit, but essentially not so, because the top 10, they just moved them around a little bit.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, we are at almost 1 o'clock. That concludes our webinar. God bless you.